grade 12 learners, and welcome to today's subject lesson, which is life sciences. My name is Tinyiko Vuma, and I am with my colleague, Ms. Suknanda. This lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. Today, we are going to look at the ear. And let us just look at some of our lesson objectives. At the end of the lesson, our learners should be able to know the full structure of the ear. So the whole structure of the ear, you must be able to know that. And they must also be able to know the functions. We're looking at the functions of different parts of the ear using diagrams. As we know that in life sciences, we focus on diagrams and we look at the labels and we look at the functions. That is what you are going to be able to understand and answer at the end of this lesson. Learners must also be able to understand the functions of the ear, and there are two functions of the ear, and these functions are hearing and balancing. Learners must know the causes of hearing defects and treatment of these hearing defects. The defects such as middle ear infections. So we know that sometimes we have got problems with our middle ears, or you think it's the entire ear because the pain will be like affecting the entire ear. And we also have got deafness. The good thing is that there are always ways to resolve these challenges, to resolve these hearing defects. As you know, in life sciences, terminology is key. We are just giving you highlights of the terminology that you are supposed to know. There is a lot more in terms of the names of the structures and in terms of different functions. You need to know what the different structures do. Some of the biological terms that you are supposed to know are we've got organ of Corti, and somebody out there will be saying, oh, this is so difficult. It is not difficult. The more you practice, the more you know, it becomes your second nature to understand these terminologies. So grade 12s, don't lock your mind and think, oh, these terms, every time we start a chapter, we are faced with terminology. The terminology are forming the foundation of what you need to know. And organ of Corti is the receptors for hearing. So you must understand that we spoke about balancing and hearing as the functioning of the ear. Then we've got organ of Corti, they are responsible for hearing. We've got crista, and the plural form is cristae. These are the receptors which detects change in speed and direction of the head. For now, you might say, oh, we don't understand what you're talking about, but I want you to keep this at the bottom of your mind so that when we unpack how the ear functions, you can relate to this terminology that we are giving you. We also have got maculae, and maculae, it's receptor which detects change in the position of the head. Change in the position of the head. You will notice that we just on terminology only, we have got three receptors that we spoke about, and the receptors are organ of Corti, and we've got cristae and macula. Ampulla, which is ampullae in plural form, so it's one ampulla or many ampullae. It is the swelling at the base of the semicircular canals which contain cristae. We will unpack this more as we proceed. This is the ear. And I know grade 12s, what you can relate with this full diagram is basically this big structure that we see. The big structure that we see from outside, and this is the pinna. However, the ear is not only what we see from outside. There are many other different parts, and also from the outside to the middle ear and to the inner ear. allow yourself to relax and listen as we unpack this whole journey through the ear. Do not despair. You look at this diagram, is as simple as you see it. It is not complicated, and that is a promise. On our exam guideline, you remember when we speak about the exam guideline, that is serving as what? As your Bible or as your Quran or as your Dida. This is what you always use when you are learning. So you go to your examination guideline and check out what is it that I need to know when it comes to the ear. So you can see that on the exam guideline, they have outlined that it's a human ear, and there are pointers, things that you need to know from the exam guideline regarding the ear. Please make sure that as you carry on, the advice is that as you carry on learning, let's say you have looked at the structure of the human ear and the functions of the different parts. What do? You are now going to tick to say this is done. You now look at the functioning of the ear. You say I've done hearing, and then balancing is done, etc., etc. Let us look at the structure of the ear. As I promised you that this is easy, you are not going to have any problems. So the ear consists of 3 different main parts. We have what is represented on this diagram in pink is the outer ear, and what is represented in yellow is the middle ear. What is represented in blue, and that is the inner ear. So the inner ear consists of 3 regions. We've got the outer ear, as I indicated, middle ear, and we have got the inner ear. Just to look at the structure itself. So this is the pinna. Please be mindful of the spelling, because spelling counts a lot. You can see this is the pinna, but now as the outer ear, the pinna, it's now continuing as the auditory canal. And the auditory canal is going to lead us to this small part here, which is called the tympanic membrane. If you check some resources, they will speak about eardrum. We are becoming more scientific in our subject. Therefore, you are advised to only speak about tympanic membrane and not the eardrum. What is represented now in yellow is our middle ear. Middle ear consists of very small bones. These bones are 3, and you just need to be extra careful when you look at your diagram so that you are able to identify each and every bone that is found. We do have this first bone that is more attached to our tympanic membrane, and that is the malleus, which is now very close to it. We've got the incus. And we have got this last one there, and that is the stapes. If you check, you will notice that we do have some windows on our ear, but not the windows that we use to get ventilation in our houses. We have got an oval window, and the oval window is now very close to the stapes. You will understand when we start talking about the functioning, the significances of these middle ear bones, which are now, the first one is attached directly to the tympanic membrane, and the other one that leads to the oval window. We do have another window that we'll talk about later. So there are 2 windows, but you must understand where the window is located and also know the function thereof. In blue, we've got the representation of our inner ear. Inner ear is very simple as well. So inner ear consists basically of 2 main parts. We have got this You see the structure here? It is in 3 planes. You can see it's 3 planes, and this is the semicircular canal. Just remember this and keep this at the back of your mind, because we'll speak more about semicircular canals when we go to the process of balancing in terms of the functioning of the ear. There is also another structure that looks familiar. If you check this out, what are you reminded of? This looks like a shell of a snail. Yes, somebody agrees, because it looks like a shell of the snail, and this is the cochlea. Be mindful of the spellings. How do you get your spellings right? You practice as you do your homeworks. We also encourage you to do peer learning, where you can make a quiz of who is going to get it right in terms of the spellings, and you correct yourself so that you are not found wanting when you write your exams. We do have a nerve. Here is a nerve that is now leaving the ear, and this nerve is going somewhere. I will not divulge now where the nerve is going, but I want you to just note that this nerve is called the auditory nerve. Check this out. We've got the auditory canal by the outer ear. We've got the auditory nerve by the inner ear. There is this tube that is very important as well. This tube here is now by the middle ear. You can see it's in yellow, and this is called Eustachian tube. We'll talk more about it as well. When we look at the outer structure of the ear, so just remember we've got the pinna, and we've got the tympanic membrane, not the eardrum as much as we know is the eardrum, and we've got the auditory canal. What is the function of pinna? This you must know. Pinna is responsible for trapping. It traps sound waves and directs sound waves to where? To the tympanic membrane. Just note, what are we talking about? It's sound waves. Where are they coming from? From outside, from the environment. And the pinna traps that and now directs the sound wave where to? To the tympanic membrane. You see, here's our tympanic membrane. So in other words, when the sound waves are trapped, you can see that this pinna has got grooves as well, you can see. So as it traps the sound wave, now the sound wave is going to take its journey. There is sound wave moving where to? To the tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane now, what does it do? It transfers sound waves to the bones of the middle ear. Do you remember the 3 bones that we spoke about that are found in the middle ear? So the tympanic membrane, its responsibility is that whatever has arrived here must now be conveyed where? It must be conveyed to the inner ear. This is now our inner ear. Looks very small, but that's where we've got a lot of brilliant small bones that play a vital role. So we said that the pinna is responsible for trapping the sound waves, and we said tympanic membrane will transfer now the sound waves to the bones of the inner ear. If you look at the middle ear, here's the middle ear now. Never mind, here it is saying eardrum. You know that is the eardrum, but that's our tympanic membrane. However, please check the following. So the middle ear, as indicated earlier on, we have the malleus, which is, you see the location here, it's closer to the tympanic membrane. And we have the incus, there's the incus, which is the middle one. And we've got the stapes, which is the small one. It's even smaller than the other 2. And by the way, there is one name that is given to these 3 bones. And the name that is given is that they are called ossicles. We call them what? Ossicles. They are called ossicles. I'm referring to what? The 3 bones that are found in the middle ear. Something interesting. You know, in the past would allow learners to speak about the hammer, to speak about the anvil, to speak about the stirrup. But just check this out. So in other words, hammer, just in your mind, think of the shape of the hammer. If you come here and check the structure of the malleus, that is more like a hammer. You know, a hammer that we use. Handymen, they know what we're talking about. And then anvil, which is now the middle bone, it's the incus. The scientific name is the incus. But now anvil, this is related to a tool that is used to dig out something. And then look at this. Somebody is wearing a boot. I suppose it's winter, but just check this out. Check the shape here, where the boot is, the foot is. You can see this is basically representing the shape of the stirrup. You know, as you tap on the stirrup, and that is the stapes. Don't forget, we are only looking at malleus, incus, and stapes. And overall name, ossicles. Now, as we proceed, we do have our 3 bones, and by the way, we said they are called what? The ossicles. But now, oval window is a membrane. So when we speak about oval window being a membrane, oval window, as I said to you, that is now the exit point to the inner ear, to the inner part of the ear, because the ear has got 3 regions. We spoke about the outer ear, we're focusing on the middle ear, and there is a diagram that is going to clearly show you the oval window. And let us look at the functions. If we speak about the functions or the function is that the ossicles, what they do, they amplify and transmit vibrations from tympanic membrane to the oval window. In other words, something that I did not mention earlier on. So, as much as we don't have here the outer ear shown, sound waves will be coming from the pinna through the auditory canal. There is sound wave moving until the sound wave reaches what? The tympanic membrane. As soon as sound waves reach tympanic membrane, vibrations are created. Learners do confuse sound waves, they confuse vibrations. You must know where they take place, and you know when they are changed into something else. So now, the vibration is going to take place here on the tympanic membrane. You know, when something vibrates, whatever is close to it will do what? Will join up and vibrate. Meaning that when the tympanic membrane vibrates, it is going to cause what? The malleus to vibrate. The vibration of malleus is going to now make the incus to vibrate. And when the incus vibrates, it's now going to cause the stapes to vibrate. And because the stapes now are attached to the oval window, what will happen? That vibration now is reaching the oval window. Something interesting will happen thereafter. But I also want us to look at amplification. If you check, the pinna is very big. But as we go into the middle region of the ear and in the inner region of the ear, it's becoming smaller and smaller. Therefore, when sound waves are entering the ear, there must be amplification. Amplification means to make the sound louder, so that you are, as I speak to you, you are able to hear what I'm saying. As much as in a very quick way, there is movement of sound waves from outside through your pinna into the middle ear to the inner ear, as we'll discuss now when we carry on. You can see that the amplification now is to our oval window. Let's check this out. Amplification of sound. Check check these two areas. So we've got our tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane. There's our tympanic membrane. You can see now by the size of the tympanic membrane. And I want you to check. Look at the area of stapes, foot plate, stapes. Just check it out firstly. Look at the size here. Can you see the size of the tympanic membrane? Shows that it's bigger than now this area here. Therefore, as sound enters, it must be amplified. If you check, look, this is the stapes. Very, very small compared to the incus and the malleus. So the area of tympanic membrane is much larger than the area of the stapes and oval window. Interesting, isn't it? The ossicles decrease in size from the hammer to the anvil to the stirrup. So you can even correct as you speak about this. Let's say there's a question that is asking you for this information. You will now speak about from the malleus to the incus and to the stapes. So the sizes become smaller and smaller. This is practical. You can see the sizes on the diagram there. Therefore, the sound is amplified plus minus 20 times in the middle ear. In fact, when it enters, there must be more of increasing the volume so that by the time sound is interpreted, you are able to hear exactly what is happening. This is your live grade 12 learners. We are now looking at hearing. The path of sound through the ear. It is very important for you to know the exact different parts or regions and know the names of the parts of the ear as the sound comes from outside, which is trapped by the pinna. And you must know this order here is gonna allow you to get marks. Normally when learners answer this, they muddle up, they are not sure where the malleus is. They can even speak about oval window, for example, and then they mix it up, they go back to tympanic membrane. So the order becomes compromised. And when the order is compromised, we do have a challenge. Now, you look at the ear. Interesting enough, we know what traps the sound. It is the pinna. And look, these are sound waves. These are sound waves that are trapped by the pinna and they are directed to the inside of the ear. There's sound moving and the sound is going to, so sound waves are going to pass the auditory canal until this reaches the tympanic membrane. Then the tympanic membrane, that's why they call it a drum. You know, a drum, it will vibrate. The moment the sound waves hit the tympanic membrane will start to vibrate. And once it starts to vibrate, what will happen? The ossicles now, the vibrating eardrum, which is the tympanic membrane, makes the ossicles to move the levers. So in other words, that levers, we're talking about that small last lever there, which is attached to the oval window. Now it is going to, the vibrations are making the lever to move. I want you to check this out. Now the moment the oval window receives the vibrations from where? From the ossicles. Ossicles, where are they found? In the middle region of the ear. Now what is created? It's pressure waves. Check this out. We spoke about sound waves. We moved to vibrations. Now we're talking about pressure waves. Because the inner ear, if you check this, now this is the inner ear. The inner ear is embedded in the fluid, which is called the endolymph. The middle ear is air-filled, but the inner ear has got fluid. Therefore, now what will happen is that the fluid waves cause the organ of Corti to convert stimulus into an impulse. What does that mean? It means that the moment we have got the stapes that have vibrated, the oval window now is going to pick the vibrations and create now pressure waves. Pressure waves because now the environment is fluid. And this structure here, the one that I said to you, looks like a shell of a snail, and that's the cochlea. And what do we find by the cochlea? If you check this out, that is what we have, the organ of Corti. Do you remember when we did our terminology? I said the organ of Corti is a receptor that is now going to pick up. What will it pick up? The pressure waves. Where do we find the organ of Corti? By the cochlea. And remember, the pressure waves are what? Pressure waves are the stimulus, which must be converted. Please check this out. It is the stimulus, which is now, check, this is the stimulus, which is now converted into an impulse. Because for it to be taken to the brain, it must now be a stimulus. Then once the impulse, it must then be an impulse, not a stimulus. Sorry. Now the impulse that is created, what had created the impulse is the organ of Corti. And then the impulse now is going to be carried to, what is this structure here? This is the auditory nerve. Do not make a mistake of confusing auditory nerve. Some learners will also say that it's the optic nerve. Optic nerve is found on the eye, but auditory nerve is the one that is found on the ear. Then the auditory nerve, what will it do? It will carry the impulse to the cerebrum. Be careful of cerebellum and cerebrum. The moment you confuse the two, you lose marks immediately. Hearing, good people, it's interpreted by the cerebrum of the brain. And don't forget that by the time it reaches the cerebrum of the brain, then this is going to be interpreted. And you are able to hear Mrs. Vuma teaching you the structure of the ear. Interesting, isn't it? Can you see? The ear is not complicated. It's only the mindset when we start seeing all these different parts and the functions and the names that sometimes as learners we block our minds to say, oh, that is too difficult. It's not. The ear is the easiest, and this is a promise. If you check here, this is now giving you the correct sequencing of the parts which are forming the pathway of sound through the ear. You can see, so if you, sometimes it's very good for you to just know this, because once you know it, in your examination, you just write it down and remember, okay, so we're talking about the pinna that is going to pick up sound waves, and then its auditory canal, through the auditory canal to the tympanic membrane, then to the malleus, to the incus, to the stapes, just like that. Look at this. This is also some form of a flow diagram that is showing you the path that is used by the sound so that a person is able to hear. You can check it out. So you see now, as I indicated earlier on, you can see we're speaking about sound waves, we're speaking about vibrations, we're speaking about pressure waves, then we're talking about the nerve impulse. Can you see? And this is showing us that sound waves, you can check, this is movement. The movement is going up and up and up until we are able to reach the auditory nerve, which will now convey the impulses to the cerebrum. But also interesting enough, this can make your life so easy. If you check, you see sound waves, where are they? You can see that sound waves, they move up to this point, up to the tympanic membrane. Then vibrations are formed. So the vibrations are going now to be formed on the ossicles and then oval window. And now by the oval window, what do we have now? Pressure waves. And pressure waves, Now this is now in the inner ear where we've got cochlear fluid that we spoke about, and we've got the reflectors that are organs of Corti, which now is going to be a receptor that will convert that stimulus into an impulse. And now the nerve impulse, you can see it's by the auditory nerve, which is now going to take it to the cerebrum. Please do not write to the brain, because you will not get a mark. The brain is divided into different parts. We've got cerebellum, we've got medulla oblongata, we also have got cerebrum. You must specify that to the cerebrum. Talking about the middle ear, the eustachian tube. We have mentioned the eustachian tube earlier on to say that this is part of the middle ear. You can see it's running down as the eustachian tube, which has got very significant functions. The function of the eustachian tube is that, in fact, we're talking about how it is structured and how it is, where it is located. It connects the middle ear with the pharynx or the throat. You can attest that sometimes our ears, they really work hand in hand with the throat, like when you swallow the air, or when you want to balance, when you've got maybe a clogged ear, or there's pressure that you feel on your ear. But let's look at this. Excess fluid from the middle ear drains into the throat. We cannot have, by the middle ear here, there's no way that we can have any fluid that will form out. That is why later you'll talk about middle ear infections when there is excess fluid, because excess fluid cannot form and stay in the middle ear and a person is healthy and happy. It must drain into the throat. And very good function of the eustachian tube is that it equalizes pressure on both sides of the tympanic membrane by allowing air to move in and out of the eustachian tube. So in other words, air must move in or out of this eustachian tube, and in that fashion it is now equalizing the pressure from this side of the tympanic membrane and this side of the tympanic membrane. So in other words, both sides of the tympanic membrane, the pressure must always be equalized, because if the pressure is not equalized, poof, there is a problem. Just look at this person here that is doing scuba diving. If you dive, the deeper you dive, the higher the water pressure becomes. So as you dive, as you go deeper, the water pressure now increases. And what will happen? The water will exert. It will exert pressure where? On the tympanic membrane. Because now what is happening? The water pressure is higher, but you are diving deeper. The pressure inside the auditory canal is higher than the pressure in the middle ear. So the auditory canal, which leads to the tympanic membrane, now the pressure is very high. What is causing the pressure to be high is the water. Now you have to close your nose and blow. You must close your nose and blow so that air is forced into middle ear via the eustachian tube. So you close your nose and you blow, so that there is balance. Otherwise, that unequal balance can cause you to have earaches and problems. The tympanic membrane is going to be going through strain. In this manner, air pressure is equalized on both sides of the tympanic membrane. Can you see that eustachian tube is playing such a vital role? Because without the equalizing of the pressure, yes, definitely we have challenges. Look at this again, it's about the eustachian tube. So check this out. Yawning helps to equalize the pressure on both sides of the tympanic membrane. So sometimes, because yawning you don't plan, it happens involuntary. So and I go like, oh, I'm yawning, but I'm not tired. I'm just yawning because I want to allow the pressure in my ear in my tympanic membrane to be equalized. And check this. These are divers. Check these people that are taking off. So it's a plane, and check this out, the higher up you go, the lesser the air pressure. So air pressure will become lesser as you go up, as you take off on a flight. The higher the altitude, the less the air pressure. The pressure in the auditory canal becomes lesser, unlike when you are diving. Remember, when you are diving, the pressure becomes higher than the pressure inside the middle ear. The tympanic membrane experiences pressure from the middle ear side. Air must leave the middle ear via the Eustachian tube to equalize pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane. You must just check this out. The different scenarios will cause either an increase in the pressure on the tympanic on the side of the auditory canal, or it will cause pressure on the inner part of the tympanic membrane, depending. And because of that, there must be corrective measures so that there is always a balance that is struck. If we look at the inner ear, I have already tapped on some of the parts of the inner ear. So this is fluid filled as per explanation earlier on, and we have got the oval window. I promised you that we will find later a beautiful diagram that is going to show us a round window. There's the round window. And remember, the round window is the one that is attached to the stapes of the middle ear. And I said there are two windows. So we do have oval window, but there is also round window. You must always be able to check the location so that you don't mix them up. Mixing them up will make you, if you speak about, for example, the pathway of the sound from outside for hearing purposes, and you happen to swap and you mention round window instead of oval window, your mark is gone automatically. And sometimes examiners, they become a bit fussy. So once you speak about something else here, all the other marks that will follow in terms of the organ of Corti and stuff will be compromised. Be careful of what you mention and where you mention it. So we are saying that there are three semicircular canals. These are the tubes filled with fluid. I have also mentioned that we've got the semicircular canals. You can see they are arranged in different places. As I indicated earlier on, these are our semicircular canals. Most interesting enough is that we have got this part here, which is the ampullae. And besides the ampullae, check this terminology. We have got also utriculus. Look at where utriculus is located. Look at where circulus is also located. Auditory there for us is not Greek anymore. We know about it. We have spoken about it. Cochlea, by now you know. So already at the back of your mind, when you look at the inner ear, you know, this one that looks like a shell, I know this is a cochlea. And this one, in terms of hearing, there is receptors, the organs of Corti, which will convert the stimulus into an impulse. So that's easy. However, I want you to just remember ampulla, remember utriculus, remember circulus, because this is going to be our passport to something else. If you check the semicircular canals, you can see, I want you to look at how they are. I said to you, they are perpendicular to each other. Check this out. This is the plane that the one is located, and this one is located this way, and this one is located this way for a reason. We do have our ampulla, utriculus, and circulus. If we speak about the ampullae, already you know it's a rounding bubble. So here is where the ampulla is found, and it contains what? It contains cristae, which is necessary for balance. By the way, when we started, we said the ear is responsible for two functions. We have now put down one function. What is that function, by the way, grade 12s? You remember? It's hearing. Good. That is done and dusted. We are now looking at balance. So just check the mention of ampulla, You see where it is by the semicircular canal. Just also check the cristae, which is necessary for balance. Do you remember earlier on I said cristae, there are also receptors, just like organ of Corti, but then there are receptors for different things. Circulars and uticulars, these ones are at the bottom of the canals between semicircular canals and cochlea. So between cochlea and semicircular canals, that's where we have got uticulars and circulars. Interesting enough, what is it that they contain? They contain maculae for balance. So we spoke earlier about ampullae. What do we find there? Cristae for balance. Now we're talking about uticulars and circulars. Again, maculae, which are now receptors for balance. If you check this out, the cochlea, it's a snail-like structure. This we have spoken about it. It has organ of Corti, and movement of the fluid, which is the pressure waves, will convert stimuli into an impulse or impulses. Now, round window, this is round window. Oval window, round window. We never spoke about round window and its function. What is the function? So it absorbs pressure created by the oval window in the fluid. So in other words, you can even say it absorbs pressure from the inner ear, and you can also indicate that it prevents echoing caused by the distortion of pressure waves in the liquid. So instead of sound being echoed, this is responsible for always taking it down so that we are fine. Auditory nerve that I've spoken about contains two branches that merge into one and transmits nerve impulses to the cerebrum. Please do not talk about or worry about the different branches. Just know that we've got auditory canal. If you check this out, there are two ways in which the inner ear regulates balance. Firstly, it is what? The change in direction and speed. What is the name of the receptor? Is the cristae. And then cristae is found where? By the ampulla on the semicircular canal. You can also look at this acronym that is gonna assist you to answer this question. The other way of balancing is now the change in the position of the head with regards to gravity. And what is the name of the receptor? Maculae. And the structures are circulars and uticulars. Again, look at this acronym to make your life easy. Just note that both receptors, what do? They convert stimulus into an impulse and send it via auditory nerve to where? To the cerebellum, right? Look at bellum, that sounds like balance. Just remember that when you write your exams, which sends an impulse to the affected voluntary muscles to maintain balance. You can see that we spoke about cristae, which are stimulated by the change in direction and speed. And where do we find cristae? They are embedded on the ampullae of the semicircular canals. However, we also have maculae. These are receptors. Where do we find them? By the circulars and uticulars. And what triggers them to start noticing that they must make a way of converting something is the change in the position of the head. Circulars and uticulars and macular story. Macula, these are the receptors. Circulars and uticulars, it's where the macula are embedded. If you check this out, the macula are found in the circulars and uticulars, and you can see circulars, there's circulars and uticulars, and that's where we find the macula. When the position of the head changes, the gravitational pull changes. So if the person is upright, I want you to check this. The hair cells are standing upright, it's normal. But once the position of the head changes, you see this man here, the head is tilted. You see what is happening? Can you see the bending? This is now the trigger and this will trigger, the force of gravity is there, and you can see the hair cells are bending. And this is now the force of gravity, which is going to trigger what? It's going to trigger the macula. And the macula now will do its functions, or their function. And the function is now converting the stimulus into a nerve impulse, and this is now sent via the auditory nerve to the cerebellum, and the cerebellum interprets it and sends an impulse to the affected muscles to restore balance. We can't go wrong. This was very easy, ne? True, very easy. Hearing, we know. Balancing, we know. There's no way that we will get confused. We are now going to take a small break, stretch out, get some water, because my colleague Suknanda is going to take you through the journey of questions.
Welcome back, grade 12 learners, to the next half of the lesson on the ear. Right, now we're going to be focusing on how you're going to apply the content of the ear to the various questions. Right, so let's look at the next slide. And we're going to see that you do have Mind the Gap. Sometimes some of you may have it as a hard copy and some of you may have it as on the computer, right? So just remember that when you are looking at Mind the Gap, that on page 129, there are parts of the inner ear, right? The parts of the inner ear show you the semicircular canal, the cochlea, the auditory nerve, the oval window, and the round window, which you just learnt about. And then also you have the middle ear. So remember, this is the middle ear and this is the outer ear and this is the inner ear, right? So why do you need to learn this, learners? Because they may ask you to draw a certain part of the ear. So learn, where must I draw the outer ear from? It's the pinna and the auditory canal and the tympanic membrane. Those three form the outer ear, because you can touch it and you can touch your pinna, you can touch your auditory canal, and you can see the eardrum. But we don't say eardrum, we say tympanic membrane. Eardrum is simply made for you to understand that that is the tympanic membrane which vibrates. So those three parts make up your outer ear. Now you can see that the tympanic membrane, although it forms part of the outer ear, it's also, because it's a division between the outer ear and middle ear, you also see the tympanic membrane in the middle ear. That's because your hammer, which is your malleus, your incus, and your stapes, which is the short, you can say it as MIS. Malleus, incus, stapes are together called the ossicles, and they amplify the sound vibrations. Okay, now here's your stapes, and here's your oval window membrane, and here's your round window membrane. Okay, so here's your two membranes, and they form part of your middle ear. Round window, a smaller one, and the one attached to the incus is your oval window. So please learn to label it middle ear. And also don't forget that part there, that is called the eustachian tube. So here's your eustachian tube. So when you are talking about an annotated diagram, you got to put a label, like for example, you'll put the auditory nerve, and then annotated means next to it write the function, or give a little description about it. Auditory nerve, it carries the nerve impulse from the cochlea to the cerebrum. Okay, so that is an annotated diagram. So when you look at the diagram, look at them, draw them on another page, and then put the labels down, and next to the labels, make sure you understand the function. Now children, what's very, very important, and that's very key, is not just looking at something and swatting it off, but you got to understand that if I know that the auditory nerve carries a nerve impulse from the cochlea to the cerebrum, now they won't just ask, identify this part, give its function. No, they will say, predict the outcome. If part B, let's say they said that's part B. If part B was damaged during an accident, now you're going to say, my teacher didn't teach me that. But remember, the auditory nerve's function is to carry the nerve impulse to the cerebrum for sound to be interpreted. So if it is damaged, you're going to say the opposite. If the auditory nerve is damaged, no nerve impulse will be transmitted to the cerebrum. Therefore, no sound will be interpreted, leading to deafness. Can you see? So you got to apply that function to the question. Even the auditory canal, they can tell you that the auditory canal here is actually blocked with wax. Remember, the auditory canal is a pathway for sound waves to move from the pinna to the tympanic membrane. Okay, now if this auditory canal is blocked with wax, what's going to happen? What is the function of the auditory canal? Now you're going to say, okay, auditory canal is a pathway for sound. If it is blocked with the wax, no sound will travel from the pinna to the eardrum, right? So no sound waves will be able to move from the pinna onto the eardrum. Therefore, the eardrum will not be able to vibrate with sound. No sound vibrations will be transmitted to the ossicles. No pressure waves will be created in the organ of Corti, in the cochlea. Therefore, there will be no impulse that will be transmitted to the cerebrum. Therefore, no hearing will take place. So you're going to see that you can have a simple question for 5 marks and you'll say, my God, what must I write for 5 marks? But it's a ripple effect. If there is wax in the auditory canal, you don't only focus there. You focus, if there's wax, what are the consequences of that? That the sound waves will not be able to reach the tympanic membrane. And then the tympanic membrane won't be able to vibrate. And then no sound vibrations will travel to the ossicles. No amplification of sound. No pressure waves will be created in the cochlea. And therefore, no nerve impulse will be carried by the auditory nerve to the cerebrum. And that's where you're going to be getting your 5 marks. Okay, that is for your outer ear. Now, lots of questions can come on the tympanic membrane. They can ask you, explain, or let's say they put for the tympanic membrane, for the pinna, A, the auditory canal, they can make it D, the tympanic membrane, they can make it F. And then they will say, write down the letter which will have a grommet inserted should there be a middle ear infection. Now, if there's a middle ear infection, the grommet will not be put into the pinna, not into the auditory canal, but it's placed on the other opposite side of the tympanic membrane, on the side here in the middle ear. So they won't put the grommet on that side because then it's going to block the sound waves. They're going to put it at the bottom of the tympanic membrane so that it can drain the fluid into your eustachian tube. Can you see that? Let's look at this diagram of the inner ear. What are these? These are 3 semicircular canals. What is it filled with? You're going to ask yourself. It's filled with a fluid called endolymph. Why are these canals arranged in vertical, horizontal, horizontal? Why are they arranged in 3 different planes? That's because the endolymph can move through one of them depending on how the head is moving. Again, why are the semicircular canals arranged in 3 different planes? Vertical, horizontal to the left, horizontal to the right. So that depends how you move your head. The fluid can move through one of the canals to create a stimulus, all right? Because we move our head all the time, and remember, our ears is in our head and our brain is in our head. So messages must move quickly from your ear to the brain, quickly from your eye to the brain, nose to the brain. That's where your sensory organs, all sensory organs are found in your head. And remember, the ear is a sense organ for hearing, but it's also a sense organ to control your balance. And this part here, this semicircular canals, has fluid and an ampulla and a utriculus and a sacculus that maintains your balance. And what is it filled with? Fluid. And what do they have? Receptors. What are the receptors? My colleague just explained to you. The receptors at the base of the semicircular canal, which is the ampulla, the receptor is called the cristae. And what is the cristae sensitive to? Speed and direction of the head. Okay? And here is your utriculus and your sacculus. And that's where you're going to have your receptor called the macula. Okay, that's the macula, and it's a receptor. And what is the name of the receptor there? It's called the cristae. So here's your semicircular canals filled with fluid. The fluid moves through one of them and it's going to stimulate the cristae and tell the cerebellum that the head is positioned in this direction and that the head is moving in that direction at this speed. So the person knows how to balance their body. All right, so please learn that from your mind the gap on page 29. All learners must add the labels and functions and annotate. This diagram means next to each label write down cristae, mechanoreceptor, sensitive to the stimulus of speed and direction of the head. Macula, mechanoreceptor, sensitive to the changes in the position of the head. You're standing upright and suddenly you want to bend down to tie your shoelace. Your head's position has changed, but you take it for granted that you're not going to topple over. That's because your macula is sending a message to your cerebellum, and your cerebellum is sending a message to your voluntary muscles. What's voluntary muscles, learners? They are muscles to which your bones are attached. That means on your skeleton, your bones on your neck, the bones on your hands, the bones on your legs, right? They have muscles neat attached to it. That muscle is a voluntary muscle. Muscles which you can control. You can control the bending and movement of your head and your neck. But you can't control the involuntary muscles in the iris of your eye. You can't control the radial and circular muscles. That's involuntary, yes, but you can control the muscles attached to your bones, like your hands and your legs and your neck. What you can control. So the cerebellum sends messages to those muscles. Did you ever see a tightrope walker? Right, where in a circus he will walk across the rope. He can't just be looking around everywhere while he's walking on the rope. His head has to be straight. He has to look forward. That is the direction. He can't look backwards and side. It's going to fall over. So his head has to be straight. He has to look forward. That is the direction. And he has to keep his head in that one position. Right? He can't change it. So that all the time, his body, his muscles on his legs and arms, he's got to stretch his arms out and balance on the tightrope. All right, so this is very important. And then, learners, you can also see now possible causes of hearing loss. Right, so we looked at the structure of the ear, but we also can see that sometimes not everybody is fortunate enough to hear. Some are born deaf, or some may be born with where they are able to hear, but during their lifetime some mishap happens and they can lose their hearing. So let us see what are some of the things that can cause hearing loss. So here we have, here's your pinna, and here you can see some wax, a wax plug that's completely blocking the pathway of sound. Now, wax is important because it acts as an antiseptic. It can kill an insect that may, or ant that may crawl into your ear while you are laying on the grass, or while you're sleeping. A small little fly or a mosquito can fly into your ear, or a spider. So now the wax actually traps those insects and prevents them from actually damaging your eardrum. But that doesn't mean to say that I don't want to take off my wax. I want to keep it there so that it can trap the insects. It's also going to block the sound. So you need to ensure that your wax is cleaned, and the best way to actually remove your wax is after the shower or after you have a bath. You find the moisture from the water actually soaks up the wax, and you can slowly pull it out with the earbud, but be careful not to push the wax deep into your ear, where it can actually go and damage your eardrum. So you have to be very gentle, and you have to know exactly how to, it's like a push pull way to pull out the wax and not just push it in. Okay, so wax can also cause partial deafness, so you have to ensure that if you're not hearing well, go to the doctor. He can actually put in a little light in your ear, and he can check if there's wax there. He has the necessary equipment to remove the wax. Also, your eardrum can get damaged by infection as well. Sometimes a throat infection can cause the bacteria to move up the throat into the middle ear, like here, and it can actually make a hole into your eardrum. The infection can be so bad that the bacteria can eat away the ear if it's not treated with antibiotics. Look at this eardrum. It's got a hole. So what's going to happen? It's like having a drum. If you want to play drums and the drum has a hole, it's not going to play sound very well. So even the eardrum is not going to vibrate very well if there's a hole inside or if it's ruptured. And some people put sticks and matchsticks and all funny things and feathers and things in the ears. Now that can actually go and damage your eardrum and make a hole. So that can also cause your hearing loss because it's not going to vibrate fully. So it won't be vibrating fully because it's got a hole, and therefore less vibrations will go to the ossicles and less vibrations will eventually go to the organ of Corti in the cochlea, and very little or no nerve impulse will be created to go to the cerebellum, to the cerebrum. Yes. So damaged ossicles, you know that the tiniest bones in the human body are the hammer, anvil, stirrup, which is all what we need to say. We need to say the malleus, incus, and stapes. Those are the 3 ossicles, and they can also cause damage. That means they will not be able to amplify the sound vibrations, and therefore can also cause partial deafness. Also, your cochlea in the inner ear here, they have some hair cells in the organ of Corti. If a person is constantly exposed to very, very loud music, then you'll find that eventually those hair cells will wear away and they won't be able to create a nerve impulse. So you have to have a cochlear implant. Also, children, you can have a perfect ear, all the parts are intact, but if there is a damage to the cerebrum, whereby a person maybe hits the head, front part of the head against a window or an accident, or you somersault, then your ears can be perfect, but your brain, the cerebrum, won't be able to interpret the nerve impulse coming from the organ of Corti, and that can also cause deafness. So we spoke about what? Middle ear infections, which come from the throat, and that's because when you have a middle ear infection, it can cause mucus to build up in the middle ear, so the mucus won't be able to drain, and then it needs to drain into the eustachian tube, which is connecting your pharynx, your throat, and therefore the accumulation of fluid increases the pressure in the middle ear and causes the ear to pain, because now you're getting pressure behind your tympanic membrane. Okay, and therefore antibiotics are used to reduce the inflammation and reduce the mucus. Here's a grommet. Can you see that's a plastic little structure? It's a specialized plastic. You cannot go find something that looks like that and poke it into your ear. You'll damage your eardrum. This has to be inserted by a specialist surgeon under anesthetic in a hospital. And then it's a tiny plastic button with a fine hole down the middle. It's inserted into the eardrum in the middle ear, and it drains the middle ear fully drains all the fluid out through your eustachian tube, so all the fluid will come out through your throat, and you'll find the mucus draining out, and then the pressure in the middle ear will be relieved. So you have different treatments of ear infections. If you are partially deaf, you have a hearing aid. How does this work? This simply amplifies any sound waves coming from the air. It amplifies like an amplifier. It makes it like louder. So eventually your eardrum or your tympanic membrane can vibrate, and some vibrations can at least reach the inner ear. So this is an amplifier. And here you can see it's clipped onto the hair, fits around your ear, and a small little structure is put into the ear as a hearing aid to amplify the sound waves. You can also have a complete cochlear transplant, whereas the back of the ear is cut, and then they put a small little cochlea which converts your nerve, your pressure waves to a nerve impulse. That is like a sound processor. So cochlear implants treat deafness. Grommets treat middle ear infections. Okay. So let us look at some activities now. Here is the ear Please learn this diagram, children, because at least even if you can get, they can ask you questions at least up to 15 marks. Some questions in section A and a major question in section B on the ear. There's nothing difficult about the ear. You must score every single mark. It's only about hearing and balance and the defects and how it's treated. And if you can spend half an hour, you can learn the entire ear. So give one function of the part A. What will that be? Good, the auditory canal. E, what will that be? The one that drains away the fluid and that equalizes pressure on either side of the eardrum, and it also connects the pharynx. See, what is E? It connects the middle ear to your throat. E maintains equal pressure on either side of the eardrum. Here's it on this side. Okay, here's it on this side. Pressure on this side and pressure on that side, right? So this is the eustachian tube by allowing air to move in and out. So what is E? E for eustachian tube. And what is F? That is oval window, and that is the round window. Let's check if it's correct. A, we said, is the auditory canal. Oh, did you see what happened there, learners? We gave the part, but what did they ask for? Function. So always read what the question is asking. Don't just see A and then give the letter. They're asking for the function and not just the label. But you must always remember, if they ask for the label, you must always put in your answer book A, auditory canal. Even if they don't ask for it, you put it and then state the function. Transmits sound waves to the tympanic membrane. Also, what else does it do? It also secretes earwax, depending on the mark allocation. If they say, state two functions of part A, or they say, state the functions of part A, 2 marks. Secretes wax, allows sound waves to move from the pinna onto the tympanic membrane. E, what does it do? It equalizes pressure on either side of the eardrum. It also connects the middle ear to the throat, right? So let's see, it equalizes pressure on either side of the ear of the tympanic membrane. That's the main part, né? And remember, how does it do it? It allows air to move in and out. But main function of eustachian tube is that it equalizes pressure on either side of the eardrum. But it also connects the throat to the middle ear. That is just a structural function. It's not a function, but that's a structural part of what it does. It connects the middle ear to the throat. Okay. And then F is a round window. And what does the round window do? The round window releases pressure. How does it release? It actually absorbs pressure waves from the fluid of the cochlea, so that sound is not distorted, so that sound is clear. There are no echoes. Okay, you don't have to say hello, where, you understand? That is an echo. So the round window absorbs pressure waves to prevent echoes. All right, let us look at the next one here. Activity 2, explain why people with middle ear infections are usually advised not to travel by an aeroplane. Now remember, children, if you have a middle ear infection, it means there's fluid building up in the middle ear. It means fluid is building up in the middle ear. So if fluid is building up in the middle ear, it's already creating pressure on the tympanic membrane. Now, when you are going to go with an aeroplane, the pressure is going to be even higher. So you're going to get high pressure from this side of the pinna onto your tympanic membrane, and you're getting high pressure from the middle ear onto the tympanic. So both places, from both sides, your tympanic membrane is going to be bombarded with high pressure, and it can cause it to burst. So that's why a person with a middle ear infection needs to be treated. They would ask you before you enter the plane, do you have an infection in your ears, right? Are you sick? So you have to treat it with an antibiotic. Make sure you have no middle ear infection, no earache, and then you can go into the plane. So why are they not allowed to travel? Because mucus will build up in the middle ear, right? This will lead to blockage in the eustachian tube, okay? Remember, your eustachian tube connects your middle ear to your throat. So if mucus is in the middle ear, it's going to create a blockage in the eustachian tube. Some mucus will also go into the eustachian tube. Then they will not be able to equalize pressure in the middle ear, resulting in the pressure on the tympanic membrane, and this may cause the tympanic membrane to burst, leading to hearing loss, because pressure on both sides of the eardrum will be very high, from the air pressure up in the sky and also due to the mucus building up in the middle ear. That's also going to create high pressure, and the eardrum or the tympanic membrane can burst. Next one, explain the consequences on the human body if part A becomes hardened. Now this part A is what? It's the round window. Now always ask yourself, what's my function of my round window? It prevents echoes. It prevents sound distortion. What do we mean by distortion? When sound is not clear and there's an echo. So that means your round window is not working well. Maybe it's hardened with mucus. Okay, it became hardened with mucus. Maybe it's hardened with age. So now it can't absorb pressure waves. So if the part A, you want to say part A is a round window. If it's hardened, it means it cannot absorb pressure waves from the cochlea, and therefore no nerve impulse will be created, isn't it? So let us see. Can you see part A is a round window? It will not be able to absorb pressure waves from the cochlea, and this can lead to hearing loss. Why? Because if you can't absorb pressure waves, it means that the nerve impulse will be sent in a very low frequency to the cerebrum, and therefore your hearing can be affected because it will not be able to absorb the pressure waves fully, and then even if there's a nerve impulse going to the cerebrum, that sound is going to be not clear. It's going to be distorted. It's going to hear it like an echo. So although you can create a nerve impulse, but because you're not absorbing enough pressure waves, the sound is not going to be clear. Everything is not going to be heard clearly by you. All right. Explain why fusion. What is the meaning of fusion? It's when you join. Right. Explain why fusion of part A may lead to hearing loss. That means if the malleus, incus and stapes is fused as one bone, what's going to happen? They will not be able to vibrate. Remember, if this pen is just like this, it's not going to just vibrate maximum. But if I put this finger with this pen and this one like this, then you'll find the vibrations are going to be more because they are separate little levers. Not liver, it's levers, like a lever, like a ruler. This one and that one and that one. You see? Because they are loose. So the vibrations are going to be more. So if it's fused as one bone, then there's not going to be amplification of the sound vibrations. So part A, you're going to say is ossicles. Can you see? You must always name the part that they are asking for. Even if it's not needed, you name it. All right. To show that marker, to show that examiner that you know what you are talking about. Part A is the ossicles. It will not be able to vibrate if it's fused as one bone. And therefore, if it's fused as one bone, it will not be able to amplify the sound vibrations. The round window will not be able to absorb pressure waves, okay, from the cochlea, and hearing will be affected. So if this is fused as one bone, sound vibrations will not be able to be amplified. That means now your oval window membrane will not be able to create pressure waves. Therefore, the round window will not be able to absorb pressure waves because not enough pressure waves are created. It's joined as one bone. Not enough pressure waves. No pressure waves will be absorbed, and therefore hearing will be affected. So you see, you can't just talk about one structure. If one thing is affected, it's going to affect everything else. Okay? So remember that. If you can have a pen, but if you don't have ink, you won't be able to write. So if one part is missing, that function will not occur. Hearing will not occur. So remember, if the round window is hardened, or if part A, sorry, the ossicles are fused as one bone, if the ossicles are fused as one, there will be no maximum sound vibrations. Then Oval window membrane will not be able to create pressure waves. Round window will not be able to absorb enough pressure waves, and hearing will be affected. All right. Next one, write down only the letter of the part where sound is transmitted in the form of a pressure wave in a liquid. The letter of the part where sound is transmitted in the form of a pressure wave. Now, where will sound be transmitted in the form of a pressure wave? The letter wave. Now, let's see. We know pressure waves are created in the cochlea. Yeah? So, where will there be pressure waves? At C. Can you see that here? The cochlea. So, the letter, we don't say cochlea because now they want the letter. So, we know that there is pressure waves in a liquid. And there's no, you can't talk about pinna, because that's not a wave, that's a sound wave that's captured. Auditory canal, there's sound waves. Tympanic membrane, it's a sound vibration and there's no fluid there. Malleus incus stapes, that's the ossicles, there's air. The middle ear is filled with air, okay? Then here is the fluid. Now the semicircular canal has no letter, so we can't talk about the semicircular canal. We can't talk about the utriculus and sacculus. We can't talk about the oval window membrane. That creates the pressure waves, but there's no letter there, so we cannot say it's the oval window membrane. Although the oval window membrane creates pressure waves in the cochlea. So the letter of the part where sound is transmitted in the form of a pressure wave inside a liquid, it can only be not D, because that's not a liquid, it's a nerve. It can only be C. So somehow, learners, you must be able to eliminate the parts, and that's how you get to the right answer, as long as you know your work. So the pressure wave is going to be C. Write down the letter of the part where sound is transmitted in the form of an electrical impulse. Impulse is always carried by the nerve, so that is going to be D. Okay, that's going to be D. Right. Next one, explain the effect if receptors in region C. Region C. What receptor is in region C? The cochlea. It's only the organ of Corti. Okay. Remember that the cristae and the macula was found in the semicircular canal and utriculus and sacculus, but in the cochlea, the only receptor you're going to get in C, the cochlea, is going to be the organ of Corti. And remember, organ is capital O and Corti is also capital C. So write down now here, they want to know, explain the effect if the receptors in region C, that means the organ of Corti, is damaged. What happens if the organ of Corti is damaged? Then you must ask yourself the question, what's the function of the organ of Corti? It converts the pressure waves to a nerve impulse. So if the organ of Corti is damaged, no pressure wave will be converted to a nerve impulse, no impulse will be sent to the cerebrum, and therefore sound will not be interpreted, leading to hearing loss. See, when the receptors are damaged, it cannot convert what is the stimulus? The pressure wave into an impulse, right? And then no impulse will be transmitted to the cerebrum because now there's no conversion. All right, let's go to the next slide, and the person will not be able to hear. Then activity 6, explain why fusion of structures at B may lead to hearing loss. Again, can you see this? It's another question taken from another paper. So this is a very highly possible question in the June paper and end of the year. B, now they labeled it B. The other question was A. So this is B, what? It is the ossicles, right? Why will it lead to a hearing loss? It will not be able to amplify the sound vibrations. Therefore, no pressure waves will be created in the cochlea. All right? The ossicles will not be able to vibrate, hence no sound vibrations will be transferred to the organ of Corti, and fewer impulses will be sent to the cerebrum. Which part of the brain will receive an impulse from part C? Which part of the brain gets an impulse? It's carried by the auditory nerve, but the part of the brain is the cerebrum. Please don't get confused between cerebrum and cerebellum. Cerebrum is for interpreting sound and cerebellum is for balance. Here's your semicircular canals, And here is the cristae, which is sensitive to speed and direction of the head. That's the cristae. And that is the macula, which is sensitive to the changes in the position of the head. Okay, and we've done that one there as well. Remember that when the fluid moves in the semicircular canal, it's going to stimulate the cristae, which is sensitive to speed and direction of the head, right? And the cristae is the one that converts the nerve impulse. After it receives the speed and direction of the head, it's going to create a nerve impulse, which is going to be sent to the cerebellum. So the cristae is sensitive to the speed and direction of the head. Then it creates a nerve impulse sent by the auditory nerve to the cerebellum via the auditory nerve, and you maintain your balance. So name the receptors that are found in part B. What are the receptors in the semicircular canals? The cristae. Describe the role of part B in maintaining balance. Part B, the semicircular canals. You know that the fluid or the cristae is stimulated by changes in the speed and direction of the movement of the fluid. It creates a nerve impulse. It's transported by the auditory nerve to the cerebellum. Again, what's the role? How does B maintain balance? It has the cristae, which is stimulated by the change in the speed and direction, right? There's a nerve impulse that's created. It will be transported by the auditory nerve to the cerebellum, where balance will be restored. Okay. And then the next one, describe how the sacculus and utriculus in the human ear maintain balance. And you're going to see that the macula, remember I told you macula, is found in utriculus and sacculus, and it's sensitive to the changes in the position of the head, which creates a nerve impulse by the auditory nerve to the cerebellum, to the voluntary muscles, to maintain your balance and your position if you trip over. So if they say a boy is going to trip over the stone, how will he maintain his balance? The macula in the utriculus and sacculus is sensitive to the changes in the position of his head. It will send a nerve impulse to the voluntary muscle via the auditory nerve. Then the cerebellum will send a nerve impulse to the muscles to restore your balance. All right. Identify part B. We can see that that one is the auditory nerve. Identify part E. We know that is the tympanic membrane. Which part of the brain receives impulse from part C? It's the cerebrum, right? That was C is the cochlea, it's cerebrum. And then activity 10. Describe how an increased production of mucus in the nose and throat may lead to part E bursting. As we said, if there's a lot of mucus in your throat, which is connecting your pharynx or throat is connected by the eustachian tube to the middle ear, then if there's going to be a lot of mucus that's going to collect, it can cause pressure on the inside of your eardrum or your tympanic membrane, and that causing it to burst. Now, so it's going to be the mucus will block the opening of the eustachian tube, and therefore air cannot enter or leave the middle ear, and therefore pressure will not be able to be equalized. There's going to be an unequal pressure or imbalance in pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane, or you could say mucus may move through the eustachian tube to the middle ear, and the buildup of mucus in the middle ear will push against the tympanic membrane, and that will cause pressure. Okay, so name the receptors found in part B. Again, same thing, cristae. Explain the consequence if part C is damaged. Obviously, if part C is damaged, which is the auditory nerve, no nerve impulse will be transmitted to the cerebrum. See, impulses from the cochlea cannot be transmitted to the cerebrum, and therefore hearing cannot take place. What happens if part A is damaged? That's the round window. If it's hardened, it will not be able to vibrate, and it will not be able to absorb pressure waves, leading to sound distortion. Pressure waves will not be able to be absorbed if the round window is hardened. All right, and then hearing will be affected. Explain why people with middle ear infections are usually advised not to travel by the aeroplane. See, again, this is another question, same question in another paper. Obviously, if there's a middle ear infection, it's going to cause pressure on the tympanic membrane, and then the air pressure, the higher you move, the higher you move into the air, the pressure is going to be high. So there's going to be high pressure on both sides of the eardrum, which can cause it to burst. Mucus in the middle ear lead to blockage of the eustachian tube, not be able to equalize pressure in the middle ear. Pressure will be on the tympanic membrane and it can cause it to burst, leading to hearing loss. And the last question, children, this is the last one, and it's a very important one because it was very poorly answered 2 years ago, because they said a learner suffered a brain injury during a rugby match. Now you'll say, but what does the brain have to do with the ear? But you know, there's two parts of the brain, cerebrum and cerebellum, right, that affect the ear. So he could still breathe properly, but he experienced occasional loss of memory and balance. So now the question is, explain why the learner could still breathe properly. He can breathe properly because, remember, when he suffered the brain injury, he could breathe because his medulla oblongata was not damaged. Can you see that? So his medulla oblongata, which forms the lower part of the brain, that was not damaged. That's why he can breathe properly. All right. So you're going to see here, the medulla oblongata, which controlled breathing, was not injured. That's why he was able to breathe. Explain why the hearing of the learner could also be affected because of the injury. Now, they said it's a brain injury during a rugby match. He could breathe, but he experienced loss of memory and balance. And then you're going to say, but why are they saying that his hearing could be affected? So learners, you must know the functions of the cerebrum, all the functions of all parts of the brain. Because if one part is affected, the other part is also affected, okay? Remember, I can say, explain why the person would feel cold if the door is broken. So you're going to say, nobody will be able to come in, or you will not be able to prevent people from coming in, but the cold weather will also come in because the door is broken. So same thing. The brain or the cerebrum is responsible for memory. Your cerebrum is responsible for memory. So if he lost his memory, the same part, the cerebrum, also interprets sound. So if your cerebrum is damaged, all the parts that the cerebrum is associated with will also malfunction. So if the cerebrum is damaged during the rugby match, the person is experiencing memory loss, and he will also affect his hearing because the cerebrum interprets both memory and hearing. The loss of memory indicates a possible injury to the cerebrum, which is also responsible for hearing. Right, and just a summary, learners, just for you to remember the small pointers. The ear consists of outer, middle, and inner ear. Hearing uses a pathway to the cerebrum, like auditory canal, your ossicles, your cochlea, then your pressure waves, and then your auditory nerve to the cerebrum. So there's a pathway that you need to know. The tympanic membrane and ossicles amplify the sound vibrations. How does the tympanic membrane do that? The tympanic membrane has a bigger diameter than your oval window, and because the difference in diameter between the two membranes, it also helps to amplify the sound waves. Also remember, it's the organ of Corti that's a receptor in the cochlea, which detects pressure waves, which is a stimulus. Remember, the cristae is a receptor. It's sensitive to the stimulus of speed and direction of the head. Remember, in the macula, in the utriculus and sacculus, is responsible for the changes in the position of the head, and that all ear defects can be treated. And that brings us, learners, to the end of this section on the ear. Remember, you can do some homework from November 2023, paper 1, question 1.4, KwaZulu-Natal papers, prelim papers, Northwest, and there may be many other papers that if you go onto the website of the DBE, you can find a vast range of papers, and you look at all the questions on the ear and look at the answers and see how the answers are done. So the answers, or the way the answers are formatted, will help you understand the content better. Thank you, learners. Please study well, study the nervous system well. And from my side, I say thank you. And remember that the ear, the eye, the brain, the spinal cord constitutes 54 marks in paper 1, and that is responding to the environment. Thank you.